My parents demanded half of my $800,000 lottery win for their golden son, so I walked away, and the consequences that followed left them speechless. I'm a 25-year-old male and I need to get this off my chest because what went down is the kind of revenge story that would make Machiavelli slow clap. But first, you need to understand the family dynamic I grew up in. Without context, you might think I'm just some bitter guy. Maybe I am, but it's justified. I had one of those families where the hierarchy was established before I could walk. My brother Samuel, yes, he actually insists on the full pretentious name, was basically the chosen one according to my parents, Chloe and Martin. Me? I was the insurance policy who existed to make Samuel look good by comparison. Here's the kind of nonsense I'm talking about. When Samuel brought home a C+ on his algebra test in sophomore year, my mom literally put it on the refrigerator and called my grandmother to brag. Samuel is so naturally gifted at math, she'd gush like he'd just proven the Riemann hypothesis. Meanwhile, I'm pulling a 97 in advanced placement calculus, and my dad's response was, "Good. Now, maybe you can help your brother with his homework." The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was institutional policy. Samuel got his own bathroom while I shared with guests. His bedroom was twice the size of mine, positioned away from the street noise. When we went clothes shopping, Samuel tried on 15 different options while my mom stressed about finding the perfect fit. My shopping experience? "This looks fine, Tom. Let's go." Even family photos revealed the hierarchy. Samuel was always positioned center front with perfect lighting and coach smiles. I was consistently placed to the side, sometimes literally cropped out of the final prints my mom would send to relatives. She had professional portraits taken of Samuel alone for his school pictures, but mine were basic package deals from the school photographer. Christmas morning was even more screwed up. Samuel would unwrap gift after gift, a new Xbox, designer clothes, whatever trendy gadget he'd mentioned once in passing. My pile usually consisted of generic school supplies and clearance rack clothes that were always slightly the wrong size. When I asked why Santa seemed to have clear favorites, my mom would hit me with that classic guilt trip. "You should be grateful for what you have, Tom. Not everyone is as blessed as Samuel." The breaking point for me was wrestling in high school. I'd found something I was actually passionate about and thought I might finally have a way to stand out. My parents' response when I asked about joining the team? "Wrestling gear is expensive, Tom. Find a hobby that doesn't cost money." This was literally 3 months after they dropped $2,800 on Samuel's soccer equipment because he'd mentioned wanting to try it for the experience. What made it worse was watching Samuel quit soccer after 6 weeks because the coach was too demanding. All that equipment sat in our garage for years, collecting dust, while I borrowed hand-me-down wrestling gear that smelled like other people's sweat and disappointment. Coach John saw me practicing moves I'd learned from YouTube and offered to let me borrow old gear from graduated seniors. I made junior varsity as a sophomore, varsity as a junior, and placed second at state my senior year. My parents missed every single match, not because they were working. They just forgot or had something important with Samuel. Meanwhile, they attended every single one of Samuel's casual soccer practices. Even the ones where he spent most of the time sitting on the bench complaining about grass stains on his cleats. The scholarship opportunities from wrestling could have changed my entire trajectory. Coach John had connections at state schools and was making calls on my behalf, but when I brought up the possibility of wrestling scholarships, my dad shut it down immediately. "Wrestling isn't a career, Tom. Focus on something practical." This from the same man who was already planning Samuel's networking opportunities through his future business program. So, I learned to excel in silence and got really good at being self-sufficient. Senior year is when their favoritism went nuclear, and I finally understood that this wasn't just personality differences. Samuel decided he wanted to study business at some overpriced private college. $52,000 a year for what was basically a 4-year networking party with occasional classes about PowerPoint presentations. My parents didn't hesitate. They toured campuses with him, hired a college consultant, paid for SAT prep courses, application fees for 15 schools, and even flew him out for recruitment weekends. The college consultant was this pretentious woman who charged $300 an hour to help Samuel write essays about his leadership potential and entrepreneurial vision. She'd spend entire afternoons at our house, helping him craft responses to application questions, basically writing his essays while he played FIFA in the background. When Samuel scored 1180 on his SAT scores after 2 rounds of expensive prep courses, my parents celebrated like he cracked the code to quantum physics. They threw a dinner party and invited relatives to hear about his excellent standardized test performance. The college process for Samuel was like watching someone get the very important person treatment at a casino. My parents stressed over his essays more than he did, staying up late to help him brainstorm while he played Fortnite. When acceptance letters started arriving, Each one got its own celebration dinner. The private college acceptance came with a partial merit scholarship, not because Samuel was brilliant, but because my parents had applied to schools where his mediocre stats would look impressive. My turn. I wanted computer engineering at our state school. When I brought up college funding, my dad looked at me like I'd asked him to buy me a Tesla. Figure it out yourself, Tom. You're smart enough to get scholarships. Translation: Samuel deserves investment. You deserve debt. My application process consisted of filling out forms at the kitchen table while Samuel got professional consultation in the living room. When I needed letters of recommendation, I had to track down teachers myself and follow up multiple times. The irony, I actually did get merit scholarships. Full rides from 2 state schools and a partial scholarship to a technical institute ranked higher than Samuel's party school. But because I didn't need their money, my achievements became invisible. No celebration dinners, no proud phone calls to relatives. My mom's response when I showed her my acceptance letters? "See, we always knew you'd manage on your own." So, while Samuel lived it up in his luxury dorm, posting Instagram stories from spring break trips funded by my parents' emergency fund, I was working double shifts at Tony's Pizzeria, living off energy drinks and determination. The care packages told the whole story. Samuel received weekly boxes filled with his favorite snacks, toiletries, and spending money tucked into greeting cards. I got a text asking how classes were going, maybe twice a semester. I graduated with a 3.8 grade point average, a computer engineering degree, and $58,000 in student loans. Samuel graduated with a 2.3 grade point average, a business degree that was basically expensive toilet paper, and zero debt. After college, I had to move back home because entry-level engineering salaries don't stretch far when you're paying $850 a month in student loans. This is where my parents really showed their true colors. They started charging me $650 a month rent to live in my childhood bedroom while Samuel moved back into his old room for free. When I questioned this obvious favoritism, my dad's response was pure gold. Samuel is exploring his career options. You have a steady income. Samuel's career exploration lasted 14 months and consisted mainly of sleeping until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and playing FIFA with his equally directionless college buddies. But apparently that warranted free room and board while I was paying market rate to sleep in a twin bed surrounded by Pokemon posters from 3rd grade. The passive aggressiveness was constant. My mom would do Samuel's laundry and cook his favorite meals, then ask me why I couldn't contribute more to the household when I was working 55-hour weeks and paying them rent. She'd clean his room while complaining about me leaving a coffee mug in the sink. Living there became psychological warfare. Samuel would blast music until 2 o'clock in the morning, knowing I had to be up at 6 o'clock for work. When I complained, my parents said I needed to be more understanding of his creative process. He was apparently writing a business plan during those late-night gaming sessions. The Wi-Fi situation was another masterpiece of favoritism. Samuel got the password to the premium network while I was stuck on the basic connection that throttled after 10 gigabytes. When I asked for the main password, my dad said the house internet was already budgeted for current users. I was paying rent and couldn't get decent internet access. 6 months into this arrangement, Samuel announced his revolutionary business idea, an urban streetwear boutique called Street Elite. The pitch was pure delusion. He was going to democratize high-end fashion by making it accessible to style-conscious consumers. Translation: buy cheap clothes from Alibaba and mark them up 400%. His business plan was literally sell cool clothes to young people, with zero market research, no competitor analysis, and no understanding of inventory management. When my dad asked about target demographics, Samuel said, anyone who wants to look fresh with complete sincerity. The plan was handwritten on notebook paper with bullet points like get influencers and viral marketing. No financial projections, no competitor analysis, and no understanding of retail basics. But my parents treated it like he'd presented the blueprint for the next Amazon. They liquidated their retirement savings, $43,000, and handed it over without question, paying for a storefront, inventory, branding, and even hiring his unemployed fraternity brothers as staff. 8 months earlier, I'd pitched them on a tech consulting business. I had potential clients lined up, a detailed business plan, and only needed $15,000 in startup capital. Their response? That sounds too risky, Tom. Stick with your stable job. My business plan included actual financial projections, market analysis, client testimonials from freelance work I'd already completed, and detailed cost breakdowns for equipment and marketing. I'd identified 3 specific companies that needed custom software solutions and had preliminary agreements in place. Too risky. $15,000 for a business in my actual field of expertise was too risky, but $43,000 for Samuel to sell overpriced hoodies was a sound investment. That's when I started buying lottery tickets. Every Friday after work, the same numbers, 74, 23, 42, 51. They found this hilarious. "You're literally burning money," Samuel would laugh. "The lottery is for people who gave up on real ambition," my dad would say, shaking his head with disappointment. "Tom's gambling away his future $2 at a time." This from the man who'd just blown retirement savings on a business plan sketched on a cocktail napkin. The lottery ritual became my weekly middle finger to their expectations. Every Friday, I'd stop at Murphy's Corner store, buy my ticket with my numbers, grab an energy drink, and drive home, knowing they thought I was the irresponsible one. By October, Samuel's business was failing harder than New Coke. Turns out charging $85 for basic hoodies in a city where Target sells similar ones for $12 isn't a sustainable business model. Who could have predicted that? But he couldn't accept that his vision was garbage. He doubled down on delusion, spending weeks trying to get influencers with 3,000 Instagram followers to promote his overpriced merchandise. When that failed, he pivoted to blaming market conditions and people who don't understand streetwear culture. He started hosting exclusive shopping events that were basically him opening the store on Saturday nights and inviting his college friends to browse merchandise they couldn't afford. These events generated maybe $200 in sales while costing more in electricity and staffing his unemployed fraternity buddies. The pivots became increasingly desperate. Street Elite became Street Elite Gaming when he added gaming chairs to the inventory mix. Then Street Elite Lifestyle when he tried selling Bluetooth speakers and phone accessories, and finally Street Elite Pop Culture when he filled half the store with Funko Pops and anime merchandise. Each pivot required new signage, new marketing materials, new business cards, money bleeding out faster than attendance at a flat earth convention. The store was 3 months behind on rent, hemorrhaging money, and my parents were panicking. Instead of admitting they'd screwed up, they came to me with their brilliant solution. "Tom, we need you to co-sign a $25,000 loan," my dad announced over dinner like he was asking for the salt. "Just temporary until Samuel gets back on his feet." I stared at him. "You want me to co-sign debt for a business that's already failed?" "It hasn't failed," my mom jumped in. "Samuel just needs more capital to turn things around." "Turn what around?" "He's selling $20 t-shirts for $80 and wondering why nobody's buying." "You don't understand business," Samuel said without looking up from his phone. "All successful companies go through rough patches. This kid who couldn't sell water in the desert was lecturing me about business while asking me to guarantee his debt." I said no. Obviously, they spent the next 2 weeks taking turns guilt-tripping me about family responsibility and how I was abandoning Samuel in his time of need. Meanwhile, I'd started having some fun with the situation. Samuel had this habit of staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning gaming and streaming Netflix. So, I started throttling his internet bandwidth around midnight, just his devices specifically. I'd learned basic network administration for my engineering program, so manipulating our home router was child's play. Samuel would be mid-game in a ranked match when his connection would mysteriously drop to dial-up speeds. The dumbass would spend hours troubleshooting his connection, calling tech support, and even bought a new router. He was convinced we had supernatural electromagnetic interference. I'd listen to him rage about digital poltergeists while controlling his internet like a puppet master from my room. He called 3 different internet service providers, reset the router dozens of times, and even bought network diagnostic software. It never occurred to him that someone in the house might have admin access to the network settings. Then came Friday, October 13th. I stopped at Murphy's after work, grabbed my usual energy drink and lottery ticket, and got home to find my parents in crisis mode, discussing bankruptcy options while Samuel sulked in the corner like a kicked puppy. I went to my room, cracked a beer, and tried to ignore their drama. The lottery drawing came on around 11 o'clock at night. Tonight's winning numbers are 7, 14, 23, 42. I was thunderstruck. I looked at my ticket. Every single number matched. The jackpot was $800,000 after taxes. I sat there for 10 minutes just staring at the ticket, checking and rechecking. This wasn't some massive Powerball jackpot, but it was enough to completely change my life, enough to build something real. My first thought wasn't celebration because I knew the second they found out they'd have their hands out, expecting their fair share of my luck. I kept quiet about the win for 3 days while I handled logistics. I called in sick on Monday, drove to the lottery office, verified everything, and arranged for the payout. Standard protocol included the ceremonial check photo opportunity, so I played along. I spent those 3 days researching tax implications, investment strategies, and business opportunities. While my family spiraled about Samuel's failures, I was quietly planning my independence. The tax situation was complex. The $800,000 was after federal taxes, but state taxes would take another chunk. I'd need to set aside money for quarterly payments, plan for capital gains on any investments, and structure everything to minimize long-term tax liability. I consulted with 2 different financial advisors about investment strategies. A conservative approach would be index funds and bonds, generating maybe 6% annually. An aggressive approach involved real estate, business investments, and higher risk stocks. I decided on a hybrid strategy, enough conservative investments to guarantee long-term security, enough risk capital to potentially build serious wealth. Tuesday evening, I walked into the house carrying the giant ceremonial check. My family was in the kitchen drowning in bills and foreclosure notices. "What the hell is that?" Samuel asked, staring at the oversized cardboard. "I won the lottery," I said, leaning it against the wall. Dead silence. Then my mom's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Tom, this is incredible. This is exactly what we needed. Samuel can use half of this to pay off his debts and relaunch his business," she continued, already spending my money. $400,000 should be enough to get him back on track. My dad nodded like this was obvious. "Family takes care of family, Tom. You can't keep all that money while your brother is struggling." Not congratulations or how exciting for you, just immediate calculations about how my windfall could solve their problems. Samuel was already planning his comeback. "With that kind of capital, I could open 3 locations," he said, eyes gleaming. "Maybe franchise the concept, scale nationally within 2 years." The delusion was staggering. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Don't use that language," my mom snapped. "And yes, after everything we've done for you, helping your brother is the least you can do. You mean charging me rent while he lives free? Funding his business while calling mine too risky? Treating me like a disappointment for 24 years? You're being dramatic," Samuel said. "Mom and Dad always treated us equally." This from the kid who'd never paid a bill, never faced consequences, never earned his place at the table. "Equally?" I said, voice rising. "When you failed microeconomics, they hired you a tutor. When I needed lab equipment for my senior project, they told me to figure it out myself. When you wanted to start your joke business, they liquidated retirement savings. When I pitched consulting with actual clients lined up, they said it was too risky." The argument escalated as 24 years of resentment poured out. Every instance of favoritism, every double standard, every time they'd chosen him over me, my parents kept deflecting, claiming they'd done their best and that I was remembering things wrong. "Samuel always needed more support," my mom said defensively. "You were always so independent." "Independent by necessity," I shot back. "Because you made it clear I was on my own." "That's not true," my dad protested. "We love both of you." "Then why did I pay rent while he lived free? Why did his college fund come from retirement savings while mine came from student loans? Why did you attend his soccer practices but miss my wrestling matches?" They had no answers. Finally, my dad stood up, face red with rage. "If you don't give half that money to Samuel, you can get out of this house right now. We don't want selfish people living here." "Perfect," I said, grabbing the ceremonial check. "I'm out." I packed while they screamed about family loyalty and gratitude. I spent the night at a Holiday Inn, planning my next move. I found an apartment online, put down a deposit, and arranged to move in the next day. But the next morning, I realized I'd forgotten some important documents. I drove back around 7 o'clock in the morning, figuring they'd still be asleep. I let myself in quietly and headed for my room. That's when I noticed the giant check wasn't where I'd left it. I found it in the living room, completely destroyed, shredded into confetti, cut with scissors, torn into pieces. My parents and Samuel were sitting around the coffee table like they just finished opening Christmas presents, except instead of wrapping paper, they were surrounded by pieces of my lottery check. They looked up when I walked in. Well, Samuel said, holding up a piece with part of my name on it. "Look who came crawling back." My mom smiled. "Since you wouldn't share, we solved the problem ourselves." My dad leaned back with his arms crossed. "Now you have nothing. How does it feel to lose everything because of your greed?" They were sitting there convinced they'd destroyed my future out of spite. I stared at the destruction for a few seconds, processing their stupidity. Then I started laughing, not chuckling, but full-blown tears streaming, can't breathe laughter. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Samuel demanded. "We just destroyed your lottery money." "Oh my God," I gasped between laughs. "You guys are so freaking stupid." The room went silent. "That check is worthless," I said, pointing at the shredded remains. "It's ceremonial, you absolute morons. A prop for photos. The real money is already being processed and hits my account today." The color drained from their faces like someone had pulled a plug. Did you really think they'd hand me $800,000 in cash and send me home with it? I continued. Jesus Christ, you're even dumber than I thought. My mom tried to backtrack. Tom, wait. We didn't understand. You understood perfectly, I cut her off. You tried to destroy my life out of spite because I wouldn't fund Samuel's next failure. You showed me exactly who you are. I grabbed my documents and headed for the door. Tom, please, my mom called. We can work this out. You worked it out perfectly, I called back. Thanks for making this decision easy. That was the last conversation I had with any of them. The money hit my account that afternoon, and the first person I called was my best friend, Diego. We'd been tight since college. He was the only person who'd witnessed how my family treated me and called it out from day one. Dude, you actually won? Diego said when I told him, that's freaking karma in action. Diego was stuck in a corporate development job, making decent money, but hating every minute of it. He'd always been the only person who believed in my business ideas, even when my own family shot them down. He had watched my family dynamics play out during college visits and never understood the favoritism. He'd been there when I got my scholarship letters, celebrating with takeout pizza while my parents planned Samuel's expensive college tour. He'd watched me work 3 jobs to avoid borrowing money while Samuel got weekly care packages and spring break funding. Remember that consulting firm you wanted to start? I asked him, what if we did something bigger? What if we built our own software company? Here's what most people don't understand about $800,000. It's not retirement money, but it's enough to take serious risks. After watching my parents blow their savings on Samuel's guaranteed failure, I knew I wanted to build actual long-term wealth. Diego and I had been bouncing ideas around for years. We both understood that the local business market was starving for custom software solutions. Companies were stuck with expensive, bloated systems that didn't fit their needs. A massive opportunity for a lean development firm that could build exactly what clients needed. We'd spent late nights mapping out business models, identifying market gaps, and discussing what we do differently than established firms. He understood operations and project management while I handled technical architecture and client relations. Perfect complementary skill sets. I'm thinking we start with $200,000, I told Diego over drinks. Enough to cover salaries, equipment, and office space for the first year. If we're smart, we can be profitable by month 10. Diego's eyes lit up. You're serious about this? Dead serious. I'm done working for people who don't value what I bring. We spent the next month building a real business plan, not some napkin sketch like Samuel's streetwear disaster, but actual financial projections, market analysis, and client acquisition strategies. I used my engineering contacts to line up potential clients before we even opened doors. We researched competitors, analyzed market demand, calculated realistic profit margins, and built financial models for multiple scenarios. Diego brought operations expertise, while I handled technical architecture and client relations. We identified 3 specific market segments: small manufacturing companies needing inventory management systems, retail businesses requiring customer relationship platforms, and service companies looking for workflow optimization. Each segment had different technical requirements, but shared common needs for affordable custom solutions. The competitive analysis revealed established firms were either too expensive for small businesses or too inflexible for custom requirements. Perfect market positioning for a lean startup that could deliver quality solutions at reasonable prices. The rest of the lottery money went into conservative investments and a house down payment. I wasn't going to be another lottery winner, cautionary tale. By February, we'd launched Apex Solutions, a custom software development company focused on small to medium-sized businesses. I handled technical architecture and client relations. Diego managed development and operations. We rented modest office space downtown. Our first client was a local restaurant chain needing better inventory management. Their existing software was costing thousands in waste because it couldn't track real-time usage patterns. We built them something custom for $18,000 that saved them $6,000 monthly. Word spread fast after that. Our approach was different from every competitor. Instead of pushing expensive, feature-bloated packages, we started with detailed discovery sessions to understand exactly what clients needed. Many businesses were overpaying for software that did 50 things poorly instead of 10 things perfectly. The restaurant chain project taught us valuable lessons about client communication and realistic timeline management. Restaurant owners understood their business but not technology. So, we learned to translate technical solutions into operational benefits. Your new system will reduce food waste by 30% resonated better than improved database optimization enables real-time inventory tracking. Month 6 brought a manufacturing company contract to digitize their entire workflow management system. That single project generated $85,000 and established us as serious players in the regional market. Their existing process involved 5 different software platforms that didn't communicate with each other. Employees were entering the same data multiple times, creating errors and inefficiency. Our solution streamlined everything into a unified platform with role-based access controls. Production managers could update schedules that automatically adjusted shipping timelines and updated financial projections. Quality control data fed directly into production metrics without manual data entry. Implementation required 3 months of intensive collaboration, but results were immediate. Production efficiency increased 25%. Data entry errors dropped 60%. And management finally had real-time visibility into operations. Diego was the perfect business partner, hungry like me, but grounded when I wanted to scale too fast. "Let's master what we're doing before we try to conquer the world," he'd say when I got overly ambitious. His operations background kept us disciplined about project management and client communication. While I focused on technical solutions, Diego ensured we delivered on time and within budget. 60-hour weeks felt different when building our own future instead of enriching someone else. Every late night was an investment in our vision, not making some chief executive officer's third vacation home payment. Then came the game-changing contract. Month 11 brought our biggest opportunity. The largest shipping company in our tri-state area was hemorrhaging money due to inefficient route optimization. Drivers were burning fuel because dispatch still used paper maps and 1990s intuition. Their operations manager, Lisa, had heard about our work through the manufacturing client. She called us for a meeting. "We're losing $40,000 monthly in wasted fuel and overtime because our routing system is garbage. Can you fix it?" The existing system was a nightmare: Excel spreadsheets, printed maps, and dispatch software that looked like it was coded during the Clinton administration. Drivers showed up at 5 o'clock in the morning only to discover routes had changed 3 times overnight. No global positioning system integration, constant calls to dispatch for directions. Dispatchers were creating routes based purely on address lists without considering traffic patterns, delivery time windows, vehicle capacity, or driver experience levels. Routes might send drivers across town 4 times in one day or schedule downtown deliveries during rush hour. The inefficiency was staggering. Drivers averaged 12 to 15 stops per day when optimized routing could achieve 20 to 25 stops. Overtime was killing their labor budget, while customer satisfaction suffered from late deliveries and missed time windows. "Give us 2 weeks to analyze your current process," I told Lisa. "We'll build a prototype that saves 25% on fuel costs alone." Diego and I spent those weeks embedded at the shipping company, riding with drivers, timing routes, and analyzing traffic patterns. We discovered dispatchers were creating routes based purely on delivery addresses without considering traffic, construction, or logical sequencing. Drivers might hit downtown during rush hour, drive 45 minutes to the suburbs for one package, then return downtown for the next delivery. We tracked global positioning system data from 10 drivers over 5 days, documenting every inefficiency. The data was worse than expected. Drivers were averaging 40% more miles than necessary, spending 3+ hours daily in traffic that could be avoided, and making delivery attempts outside optimal time windows. Our solution was elegant: real-time global positioning system tracking integrated with traffic data, automatic route optimization that adjusted for delays, and a mobile app for instant delivery status updates. Instead of 3 hours planning routes manually, dispatchers could optimize 50 routes in 8 minutes. The prototype demo was beautiful. Lisa watched our system take their worst route from the previous week, one that took a driver 11 hours and 260 miles, and optimize it to 7.5 hours and 170 miles. Same deliveries, same day, but 3.5 hours less overtime and 90% fewer fuel miles. "How much?" Lisa asked immediately. $95,000 for the full system, I said. Plus $800 monthly for hosting and updates. She didn't negotiate. "When can you start?" That contract changed everything. Not just the money, though $95,000 was more than our first 8 months combined, but the credibility. This shipping company was a regional household name. Once word spread that we'd revolutionized their entire operation, our phones started ringing constantly. Implementation took 2 months of 80-hour weeks. But when we went live, results were immediate. The company cut fuel costs by 32%, reduced overtime by 38%, and improved on-time deliveries by 28%. Lisa sent champagne with a note. "You guys just saved my job and my marriage. I can finally get home before 9 o'clock at night." By the end of year 1, Apex Solutions had generated $285,000 in revenue and was solidly profitable. We hired 2 junior developers and moved to bigger office space. Business was growing organically through referrals, which meant clients actually valued our work. 18 months later, Apex Solutions was exactly what I'd envisioned. We were generating $950,000 annually, had 8 employees, and a client waiting list 2 months long. Diego and I were each earning more than we'd ever imagined with equity in something we'd built from scratch. We'd expanded into mobile app development and were working with companies across 4 states. The local tech scene had noticed, we were featured in business journals, won industry awards, and were invited to speak at conferences about entrepreneurship and innovation. Meanwhile, my family's situation had gone to complete hell. Samuel's store had closed permanently about 8 months after my lottery win. He'd burned through every cent of my parents' savings and was now working at GameStop in the same mall where his revolutionary streetwear boutique used to be. My parents had been forced to take a second mortgage just to avoid foreclosure. His GameStop job was particularly beautiful because he'd spent his entire life looking down on retail workers and talking about his business degree like it made him superior. Now he was asking teenagers if they wanted to pre-order the latest Call of Duty. About 6 weeks before they showed up at my office, I got a call from my mom. I'd blocked their numbers, but she called from someone else's phone. Tom, her voice was shaky, desperate. Please don't hang up. We lost the house, she said, crying. Foreclosure went through last week. We're staying in Samuel's friend's apartment, all 3 of us in one room. Your father had a heart attack from stress. He's okay, but the medical bills. Classic sob story to trigger every guilt mechanism they'd installed over 24 years. We know we messed up, she continued. We know we weren't fair to you, but we're family, Tom. Doesn't that mean anything? For about 10 seconds, I felt it. That old programming kicking in. But then I remembered sitting in my childhood bedroom, paying rent while Samuel lived free. I remembered their faces when they destroyed what they thought was my lottery ticket. You made your choice 2 years ago, I said calmly. Now you want me to save you from the consequences of your own decisions? But we're your parents. No, I cut her off. Parents support their children. Parents celebrate their successes. You're just people who happen to share DNA with me. I hung up and blocked that number, too. I thought they'd gotten the message, but nope. On a Tuesday evening, while I was reviewing quarterly projections, my assistant buzzed me. There's a family here to see you, she said. No appointment, but they claim to be your parents and brother. I looked through my office glass and saw them in our lobby. My parents looked older, worn down. Samuel looked like he'd aged 5 years and 2 more. They were staring around our space with a mix of awe and resentment. Send them in, I told my assistant. They entered my office like defendants approaching the bench, nervous and uncertain. For the first time in my life, I saw my parents look intimidated by me. Tom, my mom started, voice shaky. Your office is impressive. I leaned back in my chair and said nothing, letting them squirm. We've been hearing about you, my dad said, gesturing around. We're proud of what you've accomplished. Are you? I asked. We need help, Tom. The house is gone. Samuel can't find steady work. We made mistakes, but we're family. Family? I said, savoring the word. The same family that charged me rent while Samuel lived free? The same family that tried to destroy my future when I wouldn't give you half my winnings? We were wrong, my dad said quickly. We see that now. You've built something incredible. Maybe we could work together. Samuel could help with sales. I held up a hand. Let me get this straight. You literally tried to sabotage me when I finally caught a break. Now that your golden child has failed and I've succeeded beyond your expectations, you're coming back for handouts. It's not like that, my mom objected. It's exactly like that, I said, standing up. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my office and never contact me again. If you show up here or at my house, I'll call the cops. As they reached the threshold, Samuel turned back. You've really changed, Tom. I smiled. Yes, I have. I stopped accepting scraps and started demanding the whole meal. Best decision I ever made. The perfect ending. The next morning, I drove to the BMW dealership and bought myself a brand new M5, Alpine White, every performance package, the works. Completely impractical and cost more than my parents' foreclosed house was worth, but it was mine. That afternoon, I had to meet a potential client at the coffee shop near the mall food court. As I was pulling into a parking space, I noticed someone in a GameStop uniform emptying trash cans. It was Samuel. He looked up and saw me getting out of the M5. For a moment, we stared at each other across the parking lot, him in his red polo and khakis holding a bag of garbage, me in my tailored suit, keys to a $75,000 car in my hand. I didn't say anything, didn't acknowledge him at all. I just locked my car and walked into the mall like he was invisible, but I could feel him watching me the entire time. 2 weeks later, I was cleaning out old papers and found those extra copies of the business journal feature. Perfect timing. I mailed one copy to their basement apartment address with no note, just my picture on the cover, smiling in my successful office with the headline, "Regional Tech Innovator Builds $1 Million Company." Let them frame that. My lottery numbers might have been random, but choosing to cut them off was the best decision I ever made.